get going.
Yeah, market's
So,
coming on, we expect, but
We expect
whatever.
exactly. Good morning. It being 9 a.m. on Friday, September 12th, I hereby call this meeting of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Partnership Committee to order. We've got a pretty full agenda right now. We do have a quorum of 4, although we believe a 5th trustee will be here today as well momentarily. And we are going to be changing the order of a couple items of the agenda based on the availability of members of the town finance department with respect to some of the agenda items. So we'll note that Mr. Silverberg has arrived and has joined us as well. First item of business on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the trust meeting of August 8th, 2025. Is there a motion?
I will move. I did review, second.
I'll second.
Second, okay.
Okay.
I did review. I didn't see any issues, so, which I told Kristen.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, 5 being present. Next on the agenda is the right of refusal for 24 Indian Pond Road. Brief background, this is a affordable unit resale property. The current owner is looking to move and was looking to sell the property. There was some work with EOHLC on the maximum sale price for the property, given that the homeowner had made some capital repairs over the years, and there were some adjustments made. Previously, the trust voted that should EOHLC not find an eligible buyer, that we would be willing to exercise as an agent of the town's right of refusal on the property. At this week's select board meeting, the select board voted to allow that as well. The good news is that I've heard from the marketing agent working for EOLC on the property. They have an eligible household that is expected to sign the PNS this week, which is well within the initial 90-day window. And should that not happen, they have an ordered waiting list of 15 eligible households for the property as well. So it says two things. One, the system's working. I don't expect we will be executing any right of refusal on the property, and at a subsequent meeting we can rescind that allocation formally, but it also is an indication of the need and the demand for affordable housing. Okay. At this point, I would, Jonathan Steinberg, the Director of Finance, is coming up at about 9:10 today. We're moving up discussion of the local tax exemption article from 9:40 to 9:10. But since he's not quite here yet, if we can, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here, do a couple of quick things. If we can provide an update on the DCAM auction at Zero Lyman. Ed, do you want to?
Sure, yeah. This past Wednesday, we went to the auction in Newton that the state was holding. There were 5 properties that they had declared as surplus, and they were auctioning those off. Westborough was the first one, and the bid that we had authorized we were outbid. We did not get it, as you saw in emails going around. The winning bid was $1.125 million versus our $750 authorization. So there was pretty active bidding, and it was going back and forth at the end. The winner is someone, I'm getting the exact name. I did meet him, and he was there, and he did lean over to me. It was only 2 chairs away and said, we'll be working together. And it was quite obvious from the auctioneer that he mentioned how that zoning, local zoning,
Applies.
must take precedence over anything else. And it was quite clear. The lieutenant governor was both there, as well as the commissioner of DCAM. So,
Will that local preference, or will that requirement on abiding by local zoning, will that be in the PNS?
Yes.
I mean, do we get to see the PNS somewhere along the line? It should be public document, right?
we have it.
Yeah, we can get you a copy of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just
Yeah.
want to be sure that, I mean, it's great that people say that at an auction, but that
Right.
doesn't,
Right.
that and $2 will buy you a coffee at Dunkin' Donuts,
Right.
Not anymore.
Well, they're gonna have to apply
Okay,
for
yeah.
a building permit, right?
Right, but
Right.
again, the fact that the auctioneer said that that's a requirement
Right.
doesn't hold.
Yeah.
And the legal structure says that they don't have to, unless there's, this is something that we got agreed to. and-
It's the, there's nothing in the Affordable Homes Act statute that, other than the establishment of a minimum number of units per acre, give the state any authority to override local zoning. So the property has to be suitable for housing, and it has to meet the minimum of 4 units per acre. And so a lawyer for DCAM stood up and said it wasn't just Westborough's inclusionary zoning, that when it comes to affordability component, for all 5 properties sold, the buyer would have to adhere to,
Okay.
that the sale was as is under applicable the term he used was municipal law and ordinance, or municipal regulation and ordinance.
Okay,
And so, and they did provide a copy of our inclusionary zoning bylaw in the information packet as a requirement to the project. So it's really good news, because this started out,
yeah, I mean, it started out.
it started out build housing and
The
no
Wild
affordable was
The
going to be
Wild Wild
required.
West is gonna be out
Yeah.
there, right?
Okay.
Well, the zoning up there is mixed use
Correct.
and
Right.
also with a senior living overlay.
Right.
So we could see a couple of different options.
A couple of different options, yeah.
I
Okay.
just don't have a lot of trust in developers, that's all.
I understand your skepticism. I trust them to look out for themselves.
Okay, so moving on, we want to talk about the draft warrant article for local option tax exemption. I distributed an updated version of the bylaw with feedback from town council that many of the items that we had in the bylaw are more applicable for the rules and regulations. And the belief that, or the expectation that the trust would provide draft recommendations for those rules and regulations to the select board to discuss, refine, and enact. Some of the challenges I think we face now with this is that I believe for this to be successful at town meeting will want a sense of what those draft regulations are, to understand the impact. Because other communities, Irgamont was, as far as I know, was the first to adopt it. Their warrant article was one sentence, which was, we accept this portion of Mass General Law as a local bylaw, and that the select board will create the rules and regulations, right? Their pitch to town meeting was, given the size of their community, they can't expect more than 3, maybe 4 units ever using the program, and that could be handled by the assessor's overlay in their community. And so that did, and I've met with Jonathan Steinberg, our director of finance, and the complexities around the potential impact on the overlay are more complex than I originally realized. And so there are a number of issues around that, and what we might want to do with respect to the rules and regulations as well as, given the wording of the statute, what limits there might be on the rules and regulations the select board could enact. So, for example, is there a way for the select board's rules and regulations to limit the total scope of the program as far as impact on the overlay or impact on the tax levy? There's nothing in the statute that says they can't do that, but would that hold up if that was our recommendation or desire, to make sure that we enable the program, but in a way that doesn't adversely impact the tax base? And so what I've come to realize this and the other, as far as I've heard back from MHP at this point, I'm still waiting to hear back again. There is not yet a set of working rules and regulations in any community in the Commonwealth either. So we're on the leading edge of this. And so as much as I want to move forward with this quickly, I'm thinking that we need more time to dig in a lot more detail with the Board of Assessors, with the Finance Department, and with council, to make sure that the draft regulations that we recommend, that I believe we will need to present to town meeting, so they understand what this means and what it's going to look like, are viable and acceptable.
So
And
holding
that
off on.
I think we pull this off the warrant for October and target annual town meeting is a better date, and continue the work we're doing. I mean, even questions that are hard to calculate right now, like what would be the average dollar value of an exemption, right, given the nature of our multifamily units. We're not able to answer that now. Could we answer that by October town meeting? Probably, but then the question, well, how many do you expect to do it? And one of the things I was not aware of is that strategically, the Board of Assessors has lowered the overlay amount so that they're not overbanking for claims that don't exist and don't come in. Given that some of the other state exemptions have increased in dollar value as well, if this passed, we wouldn't want it to trigger an increase in the overlay, a need to increase the current overlay, which would increase the tax levy in that year, which would be a broad-based property tax increase. We wouldn't want to trigger that unless we knew. Ideally, we don't want to trigger that at all, right? But if we had to trigger it, we would want to know why and how much and be able to justify it. And we're not near that. And so I apologize. We sort of got the cart maybe wasn't ahead of the horse, but was next to it, running downhill. And so, knowing that, I think the bylaw itself right now is workable and legally does what we need it to do. But if we can't go in with a well thought out, defendable, justifiable, set of rules and regulation recommendations to the select board, I think we'll struggle at town meeting. And that would put the rollout of this program at risk.
Yeah,
Any questions?
the majority of the voters at town meeting are homeowners. This benefits renters nominally, right? So the homeowners are gonna say, they're gonna ask the question, how will this impact my tax cost? Will it raise my taxes? Will it change my tax rate? They'll ask it various ways, but they'll be worried about how it's their pocketbook. And if you can't answer that question coherently,
Yeah.
and the answer you give actually gets implemented, you're going to have major problems. I mean, they won't vote for, if you don't convincingly answer that question, they'll all vote against it.
Right.
And once it gets voted against once at town meeting, it's going to be very difficult to bring it back.
Well, I actually think, go ahead, Ed, you had your hand up first.
Yeah. We did, thank you. This morning I just received a dump of all residential properties, and the number of units at each property. Particularly, we're interested in the 2, 3 family and apartment, 4 to 8 apartments, because that's really where the ability to carve out an apartment or two and possibly make them affordable. So there are the number of units across those categories are 624 units, which is quite a bit. We don't know what percentage of those might be, proposed as,
Right.
Under 59. But there are a lot there. A lot of units there, particularly, both the 3 family and then the 4 to 8. The 2 family, that's the largest number, but don't know. So anyhow, it is, just to back up your point, it is a significant number as opposed to Edgemont. So we need to dive in and make some reasonable assumptions backed up with the assessor's office and other things of, what might we assume could be transitioned into affordable. So.
So I do think there is a benefit to the homeowners, right? I mean,
Right.
it's not just benefiting the tenants, and that's what I like about the program. But what I don't want to see is, a large apartment building who's currently renting, 50 units at affordable rates because that's the market. All of a sudden get a tax break.
Right. So
So I think we could limit it to 1 unit per parcel, maybe, or maybe that's a rule and regulation.
That's a rule and regulation.
Yeah.
We have to investigate if that
Right.
would be within the allowable scope.
I agree. So
And
we
these are
pull it
some of the
back and figure
complexities,
out how we're going to move it forward without.
Right. So one of the interesting aspects about what you'll bring up is, in one of my conversations with Mass Housing Partnership, they said one of the things they expect to happen, or they'd like to see happen, is you do have apartment buildings who do not have any affordable units in them officially. The rents they charge are at affordable levels. And so the term is they're unofficially affordable. Most of those situations are month-to-month lease. And it creates problems for tenants because for some of those buildings, landlords are quick to evict, right? Because it's month-to-month, they can just say, hey, they don't have to give a reason. It's not even an eviction.
They're done.
They can say, hey, we're just giving you 30 days notice.
Yep.
They don't have to give reason or cause.
Oh.
Okay? And so there is a hope that some of those existing buildings might say, oh, in exchange for the tax exemption, given we're already at that rental level, we'll move to the requirements of the law that says 1-year lease and regulations that we're looking at, which would be that the units are registered as SHI, that there's potentially deed restriction or deed rider on it for the duration that they're in the program, that to protect tenants from, a landlord going. And one of the challenges with tax exemptions is they're year to year.
Yeah.
And so you don't want a situation where someone says, I'll be in the program this year, and then, next year I won't, and now they have a tenant who can't afford to stay.
So that's
That's the complexity.
That's going to be a hard sell to taxpayers to say, well,
Yeah.
we're going to take a hit in revenues,
Right.
right, in order to enable these tenants to get into 1-year leases, and the landlord, the corporation or whatever, is not going to take any hit in their revenue because they're not lowering the rent. They're all they're doing is
Or
agreeing
they're
to
not,
a 1
or they're not lowering it, right?
Well,
And
they're-
so part of the thought about, that's part of the complexity, right? So part of the rules and regulations,
I mean, it could be a
We-
significant hit in revenue.
right, we have to look at the size of the unit, so, and the qualifying factors,
Yeah.
right? So yes, that would be a challenging aspect of it.
Whoa. If it's an affordable unit, okay, they can only charge the rent based upon, EOHLC's
Right,
Sure.
affordability.
but
So
we-
if you had, let me just finish.
Okay.
If there was a, like studio kind of a setup, they would just not be able to charge anything more than what a studio rent is. So that would lower the rent.
No,
for the
what I'm
renters.
saying is if they're already renting at those levels, right? The only real change would be going from a tenant at will to a 1-year lease. The landlord's income would remain the same.
Well,
There
that's
are
taxes would
there
be
are
different.
apartments,
But-
and
and
there
its
are
taxes
some
would
in
go up.
Westborough where
Which I don't
they
think
rent.
is a
They're not restricted as
situation I can-
affordable, but they're
hard
renting
to
at
say.
rents that are at or near or below what they would be if they were restricted affordable.
and that's part of what we have to analyze.
And that's a part of what, and so this is just another example of the complexity.
Yeah.
You know, the devil's in the details, to
Given
coin a
our-
cliche.
Given the knowledge base of the group assembled here, and yet we're having a hard time explaining it to that knowledge base, explaining it to the town meeting is absolutely impossible. Totally a fool's errand, right?
All right, well, thanks for your input.
Okay.
No,
So, thank you for coming. I don't know if there's anything either you'd like to add to this, or if we've covered it adequately,
John,
but
Yeah,
we will ask for your
Hey, John.
help and guidance and participation as we do the investigation and the figuring this out. So if you could introduce yourselves and.
John, next time you come, will you bring the rest of you?
So Wendy Alassi, Chief Assessor. I'm glad that you're revisiting this, and I think we need to gather some more information to make sure that it's not going to have a negative impact.
John Steinberg, Finance Director. I agree with that. I think that what Hank said sort of hit it on the head, that you have to be able to have answers, and presenting it in a way that you're ahead of the questions before they ask them is important in this town. It's important in front of the select board, the finance committee. It's very important. And so I think we're happy to work with you and come up with some answers and ideas to stabilize that and present it in a way that it benefits the tenants and the tax base. You know, it helps to have more affordable housing, make Westborough more affordable, that people can stay here, even with existing units. Giving them some security matters. People who have been in these units for a long time, even if a property turns over, you know, just giving them stability impacts quality of life. So thank you very much for the additional consideration. We look forward to working with you, always.
What he said.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for the quick response, which
thanks for
I've always seen from
Anything we can help with.
finance.
Let us know.
So if I could get a motion to remove this warrant, rescind our submission of this warrant article for the fall town meeting warrant.
I so move that we rescind this article and
Second.
notify.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
I mean.
Motion passes
has-
5-0.
Has the warrant closed?
No.
Okay,
No.
so we get it
Not
off
even
there before it goes, that's good, that's good.
So I will notify the town manager, the select board, and since this was potentially a planning board agenda item, the planning board as well.
Yeah,
That we're.
the finance committee will care too.
In the finance committee, so. Let me just make a meeting. Well, okay. So heading back to what's on the agenda, we want to move to convene. We need a motion to convene as the Housing Partnership Committee meeting, after which we'll return to our Affordable Housing Trust meeting.
I so move that we recess the Affordable Housing Trust and enter into the Housing Partnership Committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? 5-0, 5 being present. I hereby call to order this meeting of the Housing Partnership Committee. On the agenda is our ongoing discussion with Post Road Development and the project in the general area of the Route 9, 135 intersection, both on the north and south side of Route 9. Ed and I, representing the Housing Partnership Committee and the Trust, attended a meeting that included members of town staff, the chair of the planning board, and the developers. And Ed, do you want to just summarize where we are in the process?
Yeah, basically, the issue we've had, and it's been going on, is the developers, which are looking to build 395 units within 2 buildings on the area of Milk Street and Route 9, one being at that corner, northeast corner, the other being at 220, I believe, or 222 Turnpike Road, have been, discussing all along the cost of development and how the inclusion of inclusionary zoning is making it very, very difficult for them to make this financially feasible. All right? Done some economic feasibility analysis, and even if they had no affordability per their numbers, and we take that as they've said it, they still would not be able to hit some of their return numbers that they say they need. But in our discussion most recently, they have come to a point and say, well, we're willing to take some risk now, greater risk now, because we think in the long run this will be good for us as developers and good for the town, because we will be adding just total housing at minimum. They wanted to buy down at a bit of an unreasonable level at $50,000 per unit, as opposed to about $175,000, which would be the 70% AMI price of the affordable units. And that would just not be a reasonable thing to do for us. We made it very clear that our 10% number, this in the end, this is all the planning board's call, but we'll advise, as will others, the planning board in what they eventually decide to permit. So we did come up with a, if you will, kind of counter, or something that we thought might be more reasonable for them. Alan actually threw together some of the numbers, and maybe you can talk to that. Now, just to remind people, our current inclusionary zoning is 15%
Right.
average, which is 70% AMI. 15% of the units must be at an average of 70% AMI. And 5% would be at what we call moderate or workforce housing, which is 120%. Okay, so that's if we just followed the law as it's written, the inclusionary zoning law as it's written, that would be what we were looking at. But given the current, if you will, financial landscape for construction and tariffs and everything else, we hear it all over the place, and I'm sure the planning board and building department, et cetera, hear the same thing, that it's very, very difficult to build regular units and far less affordable units with current cost infrastructure. So, Alan, you may want to talk about.
So a little bit more context, so zoning can't make a project infeasible, but it's not the town's responsibility to make the project feasible. And it sounds like that's two sides of the same coin, because it is, and it's a very subtle difference. And so the discussions that have been happening between the town and the developer across a number of issues are about what the project will look like and the structure, things of that nature before they go. This is all they're planning to come forward with their permit request and start the process formally. You know, the good news is with the business one stop and these meetings, developers have an opportunity to work out issues with the town and recast their plans to ease the permitting process and do some of that. So, you know, as Ed mentioned, our inclusionary zoning, shorthand, we like to call it 15.5, 15% SHI certified affordable, 5% moderate income housing. And there's the inclusionary zoning bylaw has a formula for calculating buy down of from units covered under the bylaw to market rate. And so part of our discussion has been in negotiation in that the planning board has the authority to adjust that in implementation when it issues a permit.
Right.
And so they have a lot of flexibility there. So the question we're trying to answer is what would we think might be acceptable to the community and still allow, facilitate the development. So we offered a number of options that said, well, instead of, 15 and 5, they were looking for 10% affordable, no moderate income. And we said, well, what if it was, and a very low buy down rate? We said, what if we did, 10% affordable and keep the 5% moderate income? Or what if it was 10% affordable and 10% moderate income? And what's interesting, the analysis that we did, thank you, Ed, for the number crunching, is that their currently anticipated market rate rents do not vary significantly from the maximum allowable rents at 120% AMI for moderate. So, in fact, for some of their units, the allowable moderate income rent under the bylaw is greater than what they were projecting they were going to be renting them for as they do their financial modeling. So the moderate income, our view is that the moderate income component has, in the current market, minimal, if any, impact on the development and the finances of the development, but it benefits the town because financial conditions and market conditions will change over their anticipated 10 to 15 year ownership and the in perpetuity life of that development. And so it's the long-term benefit. And so, our proposal also took into account that the financial impact of going from affordable to moderate or from moderate to market are different than going from affordable all the way to market. And so we discussed some ideas about modification to the amount of the buy down for those types of transitions and gave them a proposal. They're looking at it, they're not sure that sort of gets them to where they think they need to be with respect to the affordability component. So they are now, the ball's in their court to come back with a proposal that the town can assess.
What's the buy down amount?
So by bylaw, the buy down amount would be $177,000.
No, I know, but did you propose a different number to them?
We propose, well, it depends on which option they pick.
Okay.
And it also, our view is if we're going to modify the buy down, there were other things that the planning department and the working group from the planning board were negotiating that we would want them to settle and have firm commitments on.
Okay.
So if, some of it, for example, relates to mass work grants for design and redevelopment of the 135 Route 9 intersection and things of that nature. And so there's a whole range of scales. I don't want to, in public meeting, I don't want to get into
I get that.
those discussions.
I get that, and that's
but,
fine. Yeah.
But a reduced buy down amount. And so the factors at play are the mix of affordability and market and moderate income units. We've made it very clear that going anywhere below 10% on certified affordable is actually damaging to the town because it puts us backwards with respect to 40B compliance and puts us at risk there.
Right.
There's, we're willing to entertain or hear if they're talking about, the inclusionary zoning bylaw is 70% average AMI. We said if they had a scheme that came in at 75% average AMI, would that work and be acceptable? Because we're still getting lower AMI units that we don't currently have in town that we need. At the state level, moderate income can be as high as 130 or 135%. Maybe we would entertain adjusting that percentage, even though we don't think it would affect the revenue of the project at all. To do that, and of course, the buy down amount. And so those are the levers that are discussed that they now need to work through and say, this is what we would propose and that would work for us on the project, so we can evaluate it, whether or not it's acceptable to the community.
So-
And then we would bring it here for the trust to discuss and make a recommendation to the planning board.
So when I look at it, it's 195 units? Is that right?
No,
It's both developments.
yeah, about
it's-
195.
It's 395 total units.
395.
Oh,
there's-
okay,
I'm
that
sorry.
changes
Yeah,
the numbers.
Yeah.
they're about
Yes.
200 each.
Hey,
Question, we have some, I mean, we need to compare alternatives. Our job is to use the funds we have available to buy affordable housing.
so this
That's one-
isn't
that's one-
a trust activity. There's no subsidy involved. This is straight.
Yeah, but
okay.
whether we do it as a trust or the town does it through variances on bylaws, what's going on is the town is buying affordable housing. We have a database that says what it costs to buy a unit of affordable housing. Because we have just funded 2 projects where we increased the number,
Right.
right? And I believe we only provided subsidies for the increased number, not for
Correct.
the whole project. So we know that I don't remember what those numbers are, but we know what the number is that in the public market one can buy affordable housing for. Why would we agree to any developer to allow them to sell us affordable housing for less, for more?
So
Why would they make us pay
we've
more for it?
we've shared those numbers with them
Yep,
as our expectation.
okay.
Right.
And so, but again, to me, if I were going to the planning board, the argument I would make, your bylaw says $177,000 a unit, average. Our experience is whatever the numbers are, it's a range probably. Our experience is a fair market transaction. We believe that's what the market demands. We believe it's possible to find developers to deliver affordable housing at this cost level to the town. And you shouldn't vary substantially from that unless the other benefits you're getting clearly offset the giveaway of affordable housing. And again, giving away the availability of affordable housing in order to get some road improvements, that's a tough trade-off because we really need affordable housing.
Right.
Do we need road improvements? Absolutely. I'm very familiar with that particular intersection. However, if I'd have a hard time saying give them $100,000 a unit or something as opposed to 170, and if they'll give us a few $100,000 for the roads. I mean, that's just not a good trade.
Okay. So let me just respond quickly, and then Mark. So they have those. We've shared those
Yep.
numbers and the expectations. Discussion about the differences in projects. One of our subsidies was for a conversion of units where they're doing renovation, not reconstruction. One is conversion of property, but it's net new construction of
Yep.
housing units in the range. So they understand, what we're going. They also understand that right now, and even with, Baylor Avenue, we've beat the odds. The average subsidy cost for an affordable housing unit in Massachusetts right now is right around $300,000.
So,
And so they're aware of that and sort of what our expectations are and what we need to see, which is why we've been doing, and really it's been Ed, he's been doing the number crunching and trying to figure all these options out and what might work. at this point, we've put it back to them and say, you know, here are the expectations, here are the conditions we're in, here are the things we need as a community, given our needs, and you know, and we've gone over the master plan, the senior needs assessment, the housing production plan, and what it says, and the priorities it sets. And we've now put it back and basically said, if you're gonna pull levers, you know, here are the only levers we see available, and by the way, you can't pull any of these levers this far, right? We put limits on it, and now they have to go back and figure out what that means and what they can come up with workable.
I mean, again, my simple way of looking at that, the town has gone way beyond the minimum in providing them assistance and help.
Right.
And finding a solution to their problem that also solves the town's problem.
Right.
We can't find,
Right.
we're not able, given the parameters they've defined for their business model, it doesn't suit the needs of this community. Therefore, I don't feel bad telling them, no, we can't give you a permit. Doesn't meet our needs. There's not a compelling set of circumstances that the benefit to the community is so big that we're willing to give you a variance to our bylaw. Not willing to do it.
I think,
Wait, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mark first.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions and want to kind of reinforce what Hank said. Not that I needed reinforcing because it was pretty strong, but my question was: is the buy down amount for the 5% moderate, the same as the?
So technically in the bylaw, it is. That's an area where we see potential flexibility,
So
because the market value of that buy down is very different than
well, okay, but
going from
by
SHI,
the letter of the bylaw.
any movement off of the
Right.
required housing
So
in the bylaw is
you're
two
looking
times.
you're looking at 5%, or well, let's make the math easy. A 10% reduction, right? That's 40 units. That's $3.5 million. No,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
it's-
actually more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, well,
It's $7 million.
yeah. So there's at least 7 million, right? If they eliminated,
So where would that $7 million go? Into the trust?
well, it can come to the trust. The planning board has discretion on where it goes.
Okay.
So it can come to the trust. It could go to the housing authority.
Okay.
It can go to
Given
other.
some of the that's a big number.
Yeah.
Right, and to let them off the hook for $7 million. One of the things we haven't talked about is the sewer allocation,
That's right.
right? How many bedrooms?
I mean, you're giving away a very valuable
So,
commodity called the access to our sewer plant, and oh, by the way, access to our water supply system.
No, agreed. And
But our-
engineering in the town departments, that component of the project and those issues are out of our scope.
Yeah.
but let me
Directly.
let me go further on that. We just had at the select board meeting, Ferris came in looking for a zoning change, Ferris Development, and one of the points that came up is that the town currently has enough allocation for about 1,400 bedrooms. So this project, 400 units basically, mixture of 1, 2, and 3. You're probably looking at
I don't think you have any 3 bedrooms. It's 1 and 2.
okay, so 600 to 800 bedrooms
Yeah.
out of the 1,400 that we have left.
So you're giving away half your allocation.
No, I understand that's
there
an
are,
issue.
just to clarify, there are a few three bedrooms. The
Okay,
percentage
so-
is less than 5% of
So
the
you're
units.
giving away a large chunk, right? And how are we going to pay for that sewer expansion if we don't ask?
So
for
those are questions that I know the developer is already meeting with community development, with DPW,
right.
and addressing those issues. That's their purview. You know, our role in the Housing Partnership Committee is to work with developers in the permitting process to facilitate the affordable housing component. And so we're looking at, and I expect what will come out of this is potentially some changes to the inclusionary zoning bylaw to deal with the difference between SHI and moderate income with respect to market, or taking moderate to market or buy down for SHI to moderate, to make it explicit, to remove the ambiguity that's there. But so the conversation is, they asked for something that's not feasible for the town.
Yeah.
Okay, they have a legitimate analysis that says letter of the bylaw. If they challenge denial of a permit in court, they would win. And so then the question becomes, where do you land? And so what we've done is set expectations, set absolute, we can't bend on these items, and the type of factors that they could consider so that they could come back. Hank's right, we've gone above and beyond. As a housing partnership, as a working group of a housing partnership committee, we've done a ton of analysis, and Ed spent hours and hours and hours doing it to say, look, we get the economics of the project, and here's where we see the issues are. And part of the discussion was, yes, the cost of affordable housing is a component in the feasibility of the project, but the current economic conditions, interest rates, cost of materials, availability of funding, expectations about interest rates, the private equity markets, they've got bigger headwinds on the project that they have to deal with anyways. Not to mention that they negotiated with a tough landlord, and maybe there's aspects of that part of the project and how much the land, whatever, is affecting it as well. So we've set, here are the levers that we'll consider even discussing.
Right.
We gave them some template ideas that we thought could be workable, and they are now charged with going back and saying, given the levers and the limits, here's what we would propose for consideration. And then we can bring that back and decide whether or not we want to say yes, no, and what's our recommendation to the planning board.
Can I ask a separate but not completely unrelated question?
Quickly, and then we got to continue to move on.
No, but how much of this is related to the Worcester County limits, right? Like, I've long felt like the county boundaries are obsolete when it comes to something like this.
So one of the things that it's interesting is they have a successful development in Marlborough, and this is a mirror of that. The Marlborough is part of the Boston zone for HUD. So the affordable rents in Marlborough are noticeably and significantly higher than what's allowed.
A third
higher than what's allowed, because it's skewed that way, right? Versus what's allowed in Westborough. And so that, even that is saying, well, that, they're saying, well, that impacts the project. It's sort of luck of the draw. But at the same point, you can argue that the economic condition of Marlborough is more like Westborough than it is like Boston, and which means those affordable units may actually not be very affordable, right, to the actual community because of the lack of granularity in the HUD regions. And so, yeah, the fact that we're in Worcester County has an impact, but that's out of our control. If they don't, they can go talk to HUD. I'm sure the current administration will be very receptive about redistricting zones and investing more in affordable housing. You have to live with what it is, right? For us, we know that even at our affordable rent rates today in our community, based on because we're in Worcester County, we still know that there are families who can't afford those affordable rents.
Right.
And so that's where we're at. So we'll keep you posted. Now it's a wait and see. They'll get back to us. Chances, hopefully at next meeting, there'll be a proposal. There'll be some sense of consensus that we'll have them come in to answer questions. We can present, and we can decide if we want to recommend or not recommend, or recommend with modifications to the planning board. Thank you, Ed, for all the number crunching on it.
Is, the Hazel was there. I mean, we had, at that meeting, and when you're trying to balance everything, you're saying, well, what are the benefits of the community? You could make some assumptions about, well, are we putting kids in schools? Or is the nature of the development one that would not attract families of size? Things like that. Are your taxes going to be increased significantly versus the services that are demanded? These are things that also play in, but that's a planning board question. So, but I just wanted to throw that out. Those are.
Have they filed with the planning board?
No,
Okay,
no. And which I appreciate, because they're saying we want to work through
absolutely.
some of the sticky issues before we get
Right,
to the public, so that the scope of the discussion is narrower for them and narrower for the public, and they have a sense of what will work.
Yep.
And make it more feasible. And and part of the conversation was there are other developers with other similar projects elsewhere in the state who've stepped back and recast the project. First, mixed, going from full residential to mixed use, or some other things, because the current economy makes this particular type of development challenging. Again, and agree, we don't want to give away affordable housing requirements and things just because current economy. We're thinking long-term. At the same time, we can't stop, there are limits on what
yeah,
we can do.
and
So,
they can't make the numbers work, and it doesn't
Right.
sound like they're gonna be able to make the numbers work.
I expect they will find a solution because they're experienced developers, but we'll wait and see what that looks like, and we'll be there when we're there. What did we say to our kids in the back seat? We'll get there when we get there. So we're waiting for them now at this point.
Good.
Okay, so
Well done.
if I have a motion to adjourn the Housing Partnership Committee and move back to the Affordable Housing Trust.
So moved.
Second. No, Kate got it.
Okay, got it. Okay, I'll give it to Kate. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0, 5 being present. Okay. If you'd like to be up now, we have you on for, about now. So we're going to jump to the 9:55 zoning warrant article agenda item. Jenny Gingras, the Director of Planning, is here to present us on the changes to downtown zoning that have been, if I understand the situation, it's been approved by the planning board to go to town meeting.
Yes, it's been recommended by the planning board for town meeting, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you for having me. Again, Jenny Gingras, Director of Planning, and I'm here to present the proposed zoning changes to our bylaws, specifically about downtown Westborough, that will be on the October 21st town meeting warrant. So why are we updating the zoning? In the downtown plan that we completed in 2024, it made lots of recommendations. One of them was about zoning and being able to promote a more vibrant mixed-use downtown. So to do that, we needed to change what we currently allow in the downtown for zoning. When we were in there, what we also did was we simplified the bylaws. We found that there were a lot of duplications, some inconsistency. So we simplified it, which you'll hear me explain on other screens. And then we felt like overall, by making these updates to the zoning, it would encourage the investment, redevelopment, and small business growth that has been talked about in the master plan sessions, in addition to the downtown plan. For the existing downtown zoning, I know I need to work on my image here, but this was done with AI. It's trying to explain how the zoning layers work in the downtown currently. So you have downtown Westborough, and then where we consider downtown, which is up to about where the CVS is on East Main Street, down to about Church Street. We have multiple zoning districts. So we have the business district, which currently exists, the downtown business district. We have an industrial district, and then we have some residential. And then on top of that, we have the downtown planning overlay district, or we call it the DPOD. And so that's on top of it. So in some areas, currently, parcels have the option, if they wanted to do a redevelopment, such as maybe multifamily or mixed use, they could come to the planning board and get a special permit and get approval for that. So that's what the DPOD essentially does. So through the recommendations in the downtown plan, we are eliminating the downtown planning overlay district and just creating one base district over the areas that we considered downtown. So we're taking the current district, which is the downtown business district, we're expanding it over those industrial and some of the residential zoned lots that are used as commercial. And we're, again, creating the one base district. This will also revise the use regulations. It will allow additional retail, restaurants, mixed use, and creative spaces, while allowing that flexibility that we allowed under the overlay district, or the DPOD. We're also consolidating the dimensional requirements into one schedule, which I'll talk about on a later screen. We're also updating definitions to reflect new uses and modern technology. Our zoning is decades old. Some areas haven't been updated since the 60s. So we wanted to take the opportunity to update those definitions to be able to promote more redevelopment. And then we're also amending the zoning map to include those additional parcels in the BB district that were previously zoned industrial and residential. So again, we think this will have greater flexibility for commercial uses. Site plan review would still be required as spelled out in our zoning bylaw. The design review board would provide the oversight for exterior design and signage as they do now. Bicycle parking standards for residential and commercial projects would be added in, which is something that the planning board has been doing in other zoning updates as well. Because we heard from the public that that was important to include that. And then our inclusionary zoning requirements would still apply to residential and mixed use projects. For permitted uses, one of the changes that we're making is we're expanding what is allowed by right, which relevant for this board would include multifamily. Previously, under the DPOD at least, it was a special permit. So we would be modifying that to be allowed by right, which was recommended in the downtown plan. We felt like we want to see development in the downtown. That's one of our priority areas in planning. So to do that, we have to remove some of the obstacles that we currently have. However, if it was a new development and it triggered site plan review, that would still apply for the planning board. Mixed use residential and commercial would also be allowed and encouraged. And then we're just clarifying on the use table that you can see what requires a special permit and then what's by right. For the dimensional standards, these are the dimensional standards that are currently for the downtown planning overlay district that exists. So we're just making that the requirement for the downtown business district. If you read through the zoning, you'll see we're combining two separate tables into one schedule. And then by doing that, we're providing that clarity of what the requirement is. That helps when developers come in and they want to know what they can and can't do. Right now, it's a little unclear in the bylaw, so this helps that. For the dimensional standards, it's a maximum of 4 stories, 60 feet in height. The minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet, and the frontage would be 100 feet for the creation of a new lot. And then one of the changes that we made that was recommended was a maximum setback of 10 feet. So there's no setback requirement or no minimum setback requirement, but the maximum would be 10 feet, meaning that a building, if you're doing a new building, you can't be more than 10 feet from the front property line. And that's because we want to encourage a walkable downtown, pedestrian friendly, and that's difficult to do if you have, for example, a large parking lot, such as Arturo's out in the front. It doesn't create that pedestrian friendly atmosphere that we want to see. We also updated some definitions for a lot of the retail uses, and then again provided clarity for modern uses and mixed-use developments. We feel like overall this makes the zoning more marketable and business-friendly by clearly defining those uses, and it's more appealing to small business owners and developers. So again, overall, we feel like this supports our downtown revitalization, economic development. It will encourage those small businesses and housing opportunities to come into downtown, and then simplifies the zoning for staff and also for property owners. I know this is a little small on the screen, but this is the zoning map, which you can view on the website also. And you can see the orange up on the screen is the downtown business district, which the orange is over what currently exists for the downtown business district, but it expands it to some areas. I don't have my pointer, I'm sorry, but and my mouse won't show up on here. But the area, if you see where Jackstraw Brook is on the bottom of the screen, if you look at the orange above that, that is currently zoned industrial. And so that would change to downtown business district. Then over by Brigham Street, going towards the circle, that's near where Bay State Commons is. That's actually zoned for industrial with the overlay of the downtown planning overlay district. So we're removing that industrial use. And then we're also expanding it down Church Street for a few parcels and on West Main Street near Cross Street. The lots, most of the lots that we did expand it to have a current commercial use. So we felt like it was appropriate to rezone that to downtown business. That's it. So thank you, and I ask for your support for a town meeting.
It sounds like a good thing to do. One of the pieces of pushback or feedback I think you're going to get is that we already have a traffic problem in Westborough, and making the downtown district bigger, which is what we're doing, expands the place where we're going to have traffic problems. And it's going to put a lot more pressure. Probably the right thing to do, but it's going to put a lot more pressure on the work that's being done to look at trying to mitigate some of the traffic problems we have in downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do, in the other part of what we're doing for the Rotary, we are doing a build-out analysis when we consider that. So that part is considered. I think for a new development coming in, if they did go through site plan review, they would be required to do a traffic analysis, and the planning board would absolutely look at the impact and how to mitigate any concerns.
But you're forcing downtown, you're moving downtown in the direction of being a place where you walk as opposed to where you drive, because the setback changes, as you said, it impacts the parking that will be provided. You know, newer developments will have less parking on the site. So,
Or the parking will simply be behind the building.
or,
Right.
yeah, you
It's
may
just
have
changing
parking
where the
behind.
parking would be.
Would you be looking at more like 25 West Main, you know, the newer building here between the corner and the cable station? They have the parking in the back, but
Correct.
they're fronted up. There's commercial on the first floor and then 3-story apartment.
Yes,
Is that
yeah,
a
that would be
classic?
ideal.
What,
Right.
that may be a good example of what you're trying to accomplish, that kind of development.
Yes, yeah, that's a good example. You know, you give the appearance of an active downtown, which is more attractive to someone coming in than maybe seeing a parking lot in
Yeah.
front of a business. It's not as attractive that way.
Like a strip mall.
Yeah.
Kind
So,
of.
yeah, I think with these changes, we'll hopefully see more investment in the downtown, which is a big thing. And people, spending money in downtown or at the businesses is definitely a good thing for the town.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Mark?
Yeah, so you said you had a build-out analysis coming?
The 2024 downtown plan looked at, based on the public feedback, what the build-out could be. And so what we did as a planning exercise with Kimley Horn, our consultant, is we looked at that study, and then with other town staff, we looked at what could possibly be done under potential zoning changes, and we evaluated how those new uses and changes to the zoning would impact a future traffic flow. So they did take that into consideration.
I'm less concerned, I understand that, but I'm more concerned with the sewer. Because this is an area where we can't, that's that side for it.
Go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead, Rick.
Good idea.
No, I just, from we've heard other projects coming in other areas that are proposing to take sewer allocation, but this is an area where private sewage is not an option because of the lot sizes. And I would just like to make sure that we, as a town, preserve some of our sewer allocation so that we don't say to a potential project, yeah, great idea, but we don't have sewer for you. And I just, there's no way around it down here. On a 10,000, 15,000 half-acre lot, you can't put private sewage, whereas some of the bigger lots that are being proposed for development might still be feasible
Yeah,
with.
I understand, and obviously the sewer allocation is not my decision, but as a developer, if you're coming into town and you can choose from multiple areas, and you have an area where you could do multifamily by a special permit, which is discretionary, and the planning board could technically turn down, as opposed to something by right, you're going to choose that by right option. So if we want to see more development downtown, and that's our preference, then this
No,
is a mechanism
I
for
agree with that. I 100% agree with that. I just would like to see at some point projections of sewer needs down here at full build out. If I don't know what that means, full build out, but some type of projection of over the next 20 years we're going to need X number of gallons for potential redevelopment down here. Let's put that aside and say we're not going to give it away to a project on XYZ Street that is on a 5-acre lot. That's my concern, and it's just not really a concern for this committee, though. I don't.
Okay.
No, I think it's a good point. I think it's just in general, like the growth of the town, the population growth, and commercial that uses significance of restaurants, things like that, that would put demands on sewer and water. But that's almost independent of whether it's downtown or
Correct,
slightly
yeah.
outside of town or
And the
further
recent
down.
study on the sewer did evaluate a lot of that, so that may answer some of your questions if you take a
Right.
look at that
But that's,
study.
is that a planning department
No,
responsibility, if you will?
Engineer issue.
Right.
It's a DPW town engineer issue.
Well, yeah.
And the regulations are approved by the select board.
Right, okay. Yeah, it's just the growth of the town. I mean, in general, we're,
right. Yep, but for site plan review, if you had a new development coming in, we do require a fiscal impact analysis as part of any application. So they do have to do those projections on how it would impact the town. on its resources, and then fiscally.
Any other questions or comments?
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is this, are we as a trust comfortable taking a vote of support for the zoning changes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this
So
would
I-
encourage more.
I made
affordable
some
housing
points the
too.
other night that I didn't make here because I'm not sure what the role of this committee is on that. So I'm not really ready to. Like I don't know if I cast my support here and then not support it somewhere else. Like,
Are we,
you know, like
are there some
I think
changes?
it's a good idea, but I do think there's some changes I'd like to see in the
If
zoning.
there's some changes that you'd like to suggest in the bylaw, be
Should
an
we,
appropriate point to raise it.
if, so, to help with that point, I put on my affordable housing hat and say, is this good for affordable housing? And my answer is, and particularly in seniors, things like that, and I say, yes, it is. So I would support this from an affordable housing standpoint. And that's what we're voting as a trust. Do we see this as a benefit?
Okay.
There may be other issues for other aspects.
And that's,
of-
I mean, there are other issues that I have with it that I don't think affect the benefits to affordable housing.
Right.
But I think
Good.
from that standpoint, I'm probably going to abstain on this. And,
That's fine.
just to let you know,
Sure.
you know, my
Yeah.
dilemma here is.
Understood. You get to take votes of support in different contexts because you're on two committees. I've been there.
Yeah. And I don't want to undermine the effort, right? Like I believe in the effort and I believe in the direction this is going. I just have certain tweaks that I'd like to see that I'm not ready to give up on, I guess. So,
Do we still want to feel that?
So we can do
We
it
can do
now,
that.
or we can wait till our October meeting, which is also before fall town meeting, to do it. I would need a motion to authorize the chair to provide the planning board with a letter of support for this zoning change or warrant article, as it would further the town's goals and the trust's goals for affordable housing and housing affordability.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any other conversation? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstained? So the motion passes 4-0-1 with 5
You're
being
right. It's
present.
not a matter of
Great,
if
thank
we
you.
expand the sewer
Thank you
plant.
very
It's
much.
when we
Thanks,
expand
Jenny.
the sewer plant.
Okay, so
Crystal
we're
clear.
true, but
running a little long on time.
Crystal clear now.
Okay. So we're running a little long on time, so I'm going to hit a couple of things very, very quickly. We received updated guidelines from the Westborough, from Metro's Collaborative Development for the Westborough Rental Assistance Program, and have arranged the change in the process behind those guidelines. I believe they're in the packet. The big thing is that it now requires a referral from an agency or resource, nonprofit resource that the trust recognizes. We've reached out to Westborough Youth and Family Services to make sure they agree that they're willing to provide the reference. We've done that also with In Your Shoes and the Senior Center outreach team as well. And so we expect it to move forward. So at this point, we have funds. If the grants are full, we've got enough for 4, possibly 5 families for assistance. Kate, you asked a question about the raft. The problem is, if we pull that out, if someone is receiving raft or things, our grant could disqualify them from the program or from reapplying for a second round. So we can.
It wasn't raft, it was just general, because it said any federal subsidy, I thought. So that's where, I'll go back to what.
Yeah, it has to do, Metro West Collaborative Development would rather deal with that on an exception basis
Okay,
than have it standard. We did grant in the first round, there was, I believe, one grant to a household that did have another subsidy, but still needed something to fill the gap, so we could do that.
Yeah, because it says households currently receiving or have received government-funded rental assistance, such as Section 8 voucher, MRVP voucher, RAFT, and IRMA are not eligible under RAFT or under RAP. And we had talked about the fact that there's even folks with Section 8 vouchers or other types of vouchers, including our own Westborough Housing Authority. There are still needs in those
Right.
communities. And so, but if we're cool, because it's going through a referral,
Right.
so if we're cool with understanding that there could be exceptions made here, and that could be up to Metro West Community Development, and that Julia, the referring partner, understands that, could still submit the application
Right.
anyway.
And people who are residents of the Westborough Housing Authority, they're not receiving any federal or state rental assistance. They're simply paying a reduced rent based on their income. Right? And our housing authority doesn't manage any Section 8 vouchers. We do have Section 8 project housing in Westborough.
Yeah.
Though, because it's at the project level, the subsidy's not to the tenant, it's to the project.
Right.
So the tenants could still qualify.
Right.
So it would be, the real thing comes down to the RAFT program, which has rules about accepting other forms of assistance while you're receiving RAFT funds.
Yeah.
And we just don't want to have someone come in and go through the process and then come out worse. Because they got
100%.
money for
Yeah,
us
yeah,
and
yeah,
they,
yeah.
they,
I just
they
thought
get,
it was a
they
little
get
bit too-
2,000, they get 2,000 from us and then they lose 10,000 from the state.
Right, right.
You know,
No,
it's
definitely
not
don't
good.
want to do that.
Right.
I just felt like it was a little
Okay.
bit too vague.
Okay.
Or too generalist, but I also am okay with
Okay.
just understanding that exceptions can be made.
Okay, so can I have a motion to reopen the pilot program and continue through the use of our available funds?
Please do. So moved.
I think there was a motion.
That was a
Thank you.
motion.
Yes.
So Mark's, all in favor? Motion passes 5-0. 5 being present, I will let Metro West Collaborative Development and our community partners know that that is the case. Okay, also very quick, project update. We've heard, what's the number of households in the lottery at this point for 3 Baylor? 46 homes. That-
46 applications.
46 applications, households.
Great.
That's great because it means we've got a project that's meeting a need. It's also demonstrative of the level of need.
Could I just back up though for
Yeah.
a second on the wrap? I got chastised at the select board meeting that they had to read about the potential fraud in the community advocate, and that we didn't update the
Okay.
select board on that directly. So just, I guess, for your information.
Okay,
Okay.
so noted.
All
We'll-
right.
Okay. So with 3 Baylor, there are 46 qualified applicants for the lottery. The lottery is on September 18th. There's actually a link if people are interested in watching it live. You can watch it live. 1830 Lyman Street, we,
Just on that, can I just,
Oh, yeah.
Kristen, were you able to talk to Mark?
Yeah, he said,
Just the status of the build?
so they had a frame inspection earlier this week. There's a few things that still have to be completed to get that approved. So he's got a couple more of those, and then once that's finished, insulation would be next. So,
Okay, so have they, the electrical and mechanicals, they're good?
Yep.
They've been passed, okay.
Yep.
So then they'll do insulation and
well,
board it up?
framing and then insulation.
Yeah, finish the frame, okay.
Al, quick question. We have 2 sources of demographic data on what the population of affordable housing needs are. The Indian Pond application
Right.
list and this application list, that's like 50-some families. If we could get anonymized data on what the demographics of that population looks like, family size, that sort of
Okay.
thing, that might help us in figuring out what we're doing from time to time. I don't know, I assume that.
I'll make the request that we don't need names.
No,
but just
anonymized data would be great.
household size,
Yeah,
you know.
just whatever demographics there are.
They can share.
Household size, age, yeah.
Yeah, household size, household
Yeah,
side,
and
ages,
Marital, I mean, if,
and
well, how many are single head of household
Yeah.
Right.
families?
Yeah.
criteria, and whether,
Whatever,
even though these units were both at 80% AMI, would any of the households qualify for a lower AMI level?
Right.
yeah, I mean, what the
And,
distribution looks like.
Yeah.
oh, I had one more.
Is it,
Just lost it.
Send it to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So 1830 Lyman Street, the agreement was signed for the subsidy by both parties. It turns out there's a missing date. So we're in the process of adding the date to the signed agreement, and it's fully finalized and will be recorded immediately after that with the Registry of Deeds. So that is all set. Okay, so want to jump now. We're going way out of order. I'll get better at doing, work better for my role in working with Kristen on getting the agendas and planning them out. I sort of left her in a lurch and she covered and came up with this, but it's good. I'm bouncing all over. So thank you for making me look reasonable. HB Cottages, a brief activity update, and we had our first public engagement session earlier this week, which I feel went really well. It was, I think,
Great turnout.
great turnout, larger than I thought we would see, so it's good to
I
see.
counted roughly 50 to 60.
Yeah, people turn out, which is really good. I think hopefully we put some people at ease that we're starting the engagement process now before we even do the RFP to get the community's concerns baked into our requirements and our preferences as we go forward with the project. People are used to not being aware of a project until it hits the planning board. And that time, a lot of decisions have been made about the project. So hopefully we put their minds at ease. We certainly had of a list of concerns. Some we were talking about in some detail previously. Some we talked about, and a few we had not considered ourselves that we can take into consideration. So, you know, we're I think, and I'll turn over to Hank for his impression as well. My impression is, you know, I'm scheduled next week to present. We're scheduled to present to the planning board an overview of the project and where we're going and sort of what's our initial ask. And the initial ask is really sharing our project concepts, the concerns we've hit about the community, and the ask for the planning board being, you know, if you were the permitting authority for this project, what would your concerns be? And based on that, what should we build into the RFP as far as requirements or preferences as we evaluate proposals? And do you want to put any bounds on the project that we should consider now before we issue the RFP so it's baked in? And get that level of assistance. And also a commitment from the planning board that once we have a developer, that they'll work with the developer again to say, if we were the issuing authority for the permit, here's what we would be looking for, discuss that, come to consensus. So that's included in the request for the comprehensive permit to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
yeah, we're gonna have to clarify what set of standards they're providing this judgment against, because we clearly don't meet
Right.
the bylaws as written. So they're gonna have to imagine or come up with some set of standards that, if we get our arms around what those standards are that they're judging the project against, that would be a big help.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if if design review board came up in that.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, whether they ask us to go to that board as well,
Okay.
or the developer needs to go to that board, because normally with a ZBA 40B, they would not. I believe they would not have to go to design review. So-
Right, and if the planning board would like us, we're happy to. I mean, we're already planning on, you know, we're planning on going before the Historical Commission. Again, it's one of these areas where there's no legal requirement for us to do that at this point, and there's no legal requirement for a Historical Commission to provide design guidelines that we would build in the RFP. We want to give them the opportunity to do that as feedback again, so that our RFP is the best solution for the project and the community and the town. And you know that and particularly there was concern about density, number of residents coming in, the number of units. We were asked specifically to come up with at least one more concept for Beach Street, which would be either townhomes or a single building more back on the lot. Concerns about setback in light bleed and headlights of cars moving through parking lots, things of that nature that I think from an action standpoint, the working group can meet and talk about other concepts and work with Waterman Design on that. I think that's worth pursuing, as well as refinement. The other thing is that currently Beach Street, we have 750 square foot footprints, and we're talking about those being duplexes. That means 2 units just above, when you take out staircase, it's space, egress, you're talking 2 units just above 700 square feet, which is the minimum SHI requirement for 1-bedrooms. So we're really talking, the current concepts would put all of the units at Beach Street as studios or 1-bedrooms. It'd be very hard. It's very hard to do a 2-bedroom at 750 square feet. We'd be below the minimum for EOHLC to approve them as units as well. And so there's some concept rethink for Beach Street, without a doubt. There's some other considerations we were asked with respect to High Street. So I think in parallel with starting the conversation with the planning board, we should still go ahead with that next week. We have the working group has some work to do that we can do on further refining and modifying concepts as we start outlining the requirements and the criteria that we want in the RFP.
So one of the biggest pushbacks I thought was density.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And is it something we want to look at an option where we lower the density significantly and incorporate like 2 Baylor Ave style units with one at market rate and one at affordable? Or something like that. Maybe 3 on a lot.
We gotta
2
look at,
affordable, 1
we
market
gotta
rate.
look at the financials.
Well, that's why I'm saying.
The
we might
financial,
have-
I mean,
do
the
we
the
put in-
financials,
do we allow
there's
one
2
market
things
rate?
driving the density. One thing driving the density is just the need. The town needs a lot of housing, right? The other thing that's driving the density is trying to make the financials work so that the subsidies are not so enormous that we have a hard time justifying them. Until we look at the numbers and get an understanding of what the numbers look like, you gotta pick a configuration and run the numbers on it, and then say, okay, then you can start varying it.
Well, that's why I'm introducing.
We
a
certainly
market
have to
rate.
consider the possibility that we may need to do a mixed development of some market rate,
Right.
and some. That's clearly gonna have to do that. There's a bunch of other stuff. You mentioned architectural standards, AE Historical Society and design review, and we have to decide what level of control we as a housing trust want to exercise over the developers' choices in architectural standards. We haven't laid anything down on what design standards they work against in terms of the roads, the utilities, that we provide street lighting, landscaping standards. There's just a whole number of what I call design standards. We've got to decide what degree we want to control. Again, all of that has financial impact.
Right. And there's
Just an enormous number of unknowns.
this will come as we build the RFP, because
Right.
there's the 2 basic levels of control we have are, it's a requirement of the project. You must do X, or it's a preference.
Right.
It's if it's a preference, but there is, you'll get rated higher if you meet this standard, but you don't have to.
Right.
And so it can be a preference. I think getting consult with the Historic Commission, because Six Beach is within the Vintonville Historic District, is important. Because putting guidelines and expectations in the RFP means it's less likely that we come back, get a design back, and someone says, wait a minute, this is a historic district, and the lawyers get involved. We'd rather know that, have confidence, and reduce the risk for the developers by giving them the guidance that they need to follow. And it could be the same with design review.
I think what people, as much as they say they support affordable housing, there's a stigma around the projects, right? When you use the word project, people think.
Right. We'll call it a program going forward.
Okay, but my point is that the advantage of like Indian Pond, which has affordable, you don't really know, right? You would drive down that street, you have no idea which ones are. People, I don't even think the appraiser knew, even though he made no mention in his whole appraisal about, even though he included the deed.
By the way.
Like literally,
No,
didn't address that at all, which is grounds for sanction by the state. But that's fine.
Right, that appraisal was supposed to be a market rate
Well, he still hasn't mentioned it.
appraisal, but you're right. He didn't even,
I
he didn't
think
mention it, but
the customer, the homeowner
Yeah.
got a shock when, here's the appraisal versus then you'll see, and here's your selling price.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But
he has to invoke it.
anyhow, one of the things we're doing, just to finish up on this, is I gave it to Hank because we need to get together with he, myself, and Ken, is doing a pro forma analysis. And in that, I have the ability to put in market rate versus, affordable rates, mixtures, things like that. So we can play some of those, or analysis, I don't want to say play, but look at those various different scenarios and see what the effect is on our subsidy, which is what that's designed to do, is to show what do we wind up looking at as subsidies.
Yeah, I mean, I think the advantage to creating affordable units in Post Road or Lyman Street is they all are going to be the same. There's not going to be that, neighborhood. Well, they're putting a project in, right? And that's
Right.
That's what we're battling with
and
public perception.
and in hearing the concerns, I don't really feel that we were hearing not in my backyard. We were hearing I didn't hear much of don't do the project at all. It was, we've got the options we have and the densities and some of the layout we have concerns that we can definitely look at and mitigate. And some aspects of it that we hadn't thought about, headlights and how good's the light shielding, and are we going to?
Yeah, I mean, the
are we
more-
going to do street high level lighting or?
Kate's got her hand up, but I
Curbside
could
lighting,
keep talking all day.
So I have several thoughts about the meeting
Okay.
that happened on Tuesday, whatever night that was. And so for me, this was my first time attending something like this. And so I think everything is relative, right? So for some of you at the table, you felt like it was the meeting went really, really well, or went well kind of, relative to some other experiences that you've had. I left that meeting with a different feeling. I think that we did some things really well in terms of laying out the Trust's goals and our mission and giving a lot of information about where we were thinking and what we were thinking about. I don't think that we left enough time for people to give all of their reactions. And so I think I have some thoughts about how we might handle these meetings in the future. And I think, and that's, for a future discussion. I don't think we need to belabor how this meeting went necessarily, but I do think that my reactions to the meeting were that people had a lot to say, and we heard from some of them, but we didn't hear from all of them. And so, and where I land in all of this is, yes, to Hank's point, like there is a demand here, like, and to, we heard that from the Indian Pond and Baylor. There is a demand, and so we need to meet that demand. So there's a reason that we are looking at high density, and also we are going to set up the future residents for failure if we currently go at this what we proposed right now, because the neighbors are going to hate them.
Right.
And so we can't do that to them. So we need to listen to what people said and to really reconsider the density piece of this, and also like a lot of the pieces. And so I do think that the thinking about adding in market rate makes a lot of sense, because also diversity of socioeconomic status in a community is a huge benefit. And so when you put people together who have different income levels, it benefits everybody. And so having a market rate unit right next door to the affordable unit is a really good thing. And so I think that might help us with our financial numbers. That's not my area of expertise, so I'm going to leave that to the rest of you to figure out. But the part that really struck me was that if we want the people who are going to live there to be happy residents of Beach Street and High Street Extension, we need to really meet the needs of the neighborhood. And I heard from the neighbors in both neighborhoods that they would like lower density, and that they would like it to be something that really matches the style of their neighborhood. And so that's where I'm landing in all of this. And so I appreciate all of the work that went into this, because this is something that is totally outside of my scope of understanding and experience. And I also was like, just trying to think about why I'm on this committee in the first place, and thinking about my role in all of this and like how I can support this effort going forward. So.
You're absolutely right.
Absolutely right. And I'll say that,
Well said.
and the reason I feel it went well is because where we are in the process, we have the ability to rethink everything and take the community input and feedback that says, if the feedback is someone saying this is bad, here's why, that's actually really good feedback. And so it's appreciated. And even to the point that people there, the people who dug deeper in saw that we actually had more concepts, and we had narrowed it down to what we thought was most reasonable. And they're saying, okay, it's not quite, you're not there yet. And and so I think we've got, the working group has a charge to modify concepts and take that into consideration. And we can do that in parallel with starting the conversation with the planning board as well and sharing the feedback. One of the things Chris and I have communicated on, one mistake we did make is we didn't ask for email addresses. And so, because it's not typically done, but we are, anyone can subscribe to our page, our homepage, and any document or news update we post, they'll get an email about I'm looking the granularity of our site. We can't do it just for this project, but I'm looking to see if we can have where people could subscribe to an email list related to this project. Chris and I talked, we're going to send a thank you letter out to everyone who attended. Ask them, give them how to provide us an email address so we can communicate with them on a regular basis. The link to the recording, the slide deck from last night is already on the project page. And I did a notice that did go out by email to our nearly 100 subscribers saying that we are presenting where we currently are with the project to the planning board and opening the discussion on how we're asking them to work with us to help make the project successful. And so, and that's a public meeting, so we'll continue the dialogue. So we've got, the working group has work to do, and we can move this forward. And like I said, for the timeline, if we're modifying, we're not going to issue the RFP until we have concepts that we're comfortable will guide the developers, that we have the definitive criteria, that we have the preferred, it's okay, ooh, this is bad rating, criteria that we want. That's comprehensive, which means conservation, historical commission, maybe design review board, select board, planning board. This isn't going to happen one meeting each with those organizations. And then from the RFP, you're 60 to 90 days to picking a winner. Then they start the permitting process. And then we're back in, not just public meetings, but public hearings that go through. And so we're still a long way off to having a final design. And I think we, I really hope for the community we allayed the concerns that the reason we're coming to them now is we'll take the time necessary to fold in the community input. We have financial issues, right? But, there's process issues with the town that all come into play, so that when we move forward with the RFP, we've got something where we have good community support, as well as the support of other town boards and committees.
One other comment in line with Kate said, similar. I sensed a clear undertone in the meeting, unspoken, of them versus us.
Yeah.
Those other people don't qualify to live in my neighborhood. My guess is that a third to a half of the people in that room at an income level, not at an asset level, but at an income level, fit 80% of AMI. 80 to 100% of AMI maybe. If they don't, they have children or close relatives who do. So somehow we've got to break through the them versus, got to get those folks to understand we're talking about folks that are like them. And we're talking about integrating capable, responsible people into the neighborhood and being that will be neighbors. That's
Right.
I don't know how to communicate that, but we've got to get folks believing that that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but I didn't get it so much as I thought it was them versus us, as in us.
100%. That's what I felt too.
And I
Smart.
will say, from as much as I appreciate that we had the dialogue, we need to enforce, set up some rules of the meeting and enforce those, because it got a little bit. I mean, there was
There was
a
some
lot
very
of
vocal-
interrupting. People couldn't
Right.
even finish
So,
their sentences, and that's not
and part of that is the layout of the room. If this had been in Memorial Hall, we would have had the microphone so people can line up, right? There are definitely some guidelines we can put on speaking length, number of times,
Well, raising
things-
your hand at the very least and being
Yeah, raising your hand,
acknowledged.
we did.
Right.
I got a little better at it, hopefully, as the meeting went on.
Yeah.
So we could definitely manage it. And I think, to Hank's point, the fact that we're going to communicate, and even mark us versus them, someone said, well, you're doing this to us. And actually, well, no, we're not doing anything yet. We have an idea, and we're asking, we don't want to do it to you, we want to do it with you, which is why we're here.
I was
And
surprised.
so-
I'm sorry. I was surprised at, as if this is cooked, this is done. You're pushing it down our throat.
Well,
and
because-
it's like, well, let me
Yeah,
finish.
yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute. We have been the most transparent as we can. You need to come in with some ideas so you can throw darts at it. And that was our point. Unfortunately, and once again, I've been to enough meetings, public meetings, town meetings, et cetera, where the most vocal will be people that are upset about something, okay, whatever it may be. And you don't hear from the people that they may have concern or something, or, but they're reasonable. They're saying, I understand what you're trying to do here, and, I want to work with you. Unfortunately, those people don't tend to speak up at a public meeting with that so much. But be that as it may, we're running late here.
Okay. So we're,
I call the question, no.
well, there's no question, it's just, it's
Yeah, I
it's an
know.
update and
It
the
was
next
a
step. So
joke.
I think
Very
we,
complex situation.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we still
agree.
go forward and start engaging
No,
the
just
planning board.
keep going down the path we're going
And
down.
the,
Eventually, this thing will start closing on a lot of the unknowns.
Right.
And as we do, the process will get better.
okay, right.
Well, I do think we need to come up with some other concepts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
So-
Absolutely.
there's a charge to the working group to come up with some additional concepts to address and to
Yep.
address concerns as expressed from the community.
Yep.
In those concepts and even modification of the current concepts. We've started the financial pro forma work, which will talk about, can it be 100% affordable? Should it be mixed market rate? What levels of affordability?
It's gonna need to be.
That we'll probably need some component there. We know that more than 10 units, we have a shot at state help with funding. Below 10 units, forget it. The state really wants 35 units, which is impossible here.
No, but we
But-
saw downtown zoning, right?
Right.
Like that might be feasible in
Well, that could be-
downtown,
right, that could be
right?
feasible
That
in
kind of
other areas,
density
right,
is
right.
more
So-
palatable downtown.
Right. So
Anyway,
it's,
so that we're getting sidetracked on.
right, we're getting sidetracked.
So
So
can I just ask just a clarifying question about the planning board meeting? Because I think, to Mark's point, I also heard that the us versus them was actually more the neighborhoods versus the trust.
Right.
Like that there was some sort of miscommunication about where we were in the process. And so I agree with you, Alan, that we are way early in the process, but there was this perception that we were way down the road in the process. And so I think that's where that came from. And so my question about the planning board meeting is, the posture going in there is more inquiry, correct?
Right,
Rather
what-
than, this is what we are thinking
what-
about doing.
can I answer since I've got the presentation? So the posture with the planning board is, here's our goal for the project, what we're trying to achieve, why it's 2 parcels, 1 project. We have initial design concepts that we have already received. And in the presentation, I've actually listed out the feedback we got and the concerns from the community that still need to, for both parcels separately. And what we're asking the planning board to do is over the next several months, to work with us on criteria and preferences that they, as the planning board, would want to see and actions they want us to take prior to us issuing the RFP. So this is, again, and because those are public meetings, it gives more chance for the project to be in front of the public, and the public can provide the planning board with their feedback as they're discussing things. So if the planning board says, the planning board might come back and say, for Beach Street, we wouldn't want to see density higher than 8 units here, right? And that's valuable information for us, right? Or they might say, from a landscape, things that planning board looks at, landscaping, drainage, stuff like that. And we can go back to business one stop again as we have more concepts on those issues, but really say, if this were eventually going to go to the planning board for the permit, what are the things they look at and what would they want to see, so we can bake that into the RFP, which not only informs the bidders of what's acceptable and what we're looking for in our requirements, but it actually lowers the risk of the developer because they have clear expectations coming in, and that lowers the cost of the project for the developer because they don't have to bake in costs to deal with those and those contingencies as much. And that's really the goal here. We're asking them to be willing to start the conversation that, with the understanding that after the bid is awarded, which could be 8 months to a year from now, right? That developer we will still ask that developer to come back to the planning board for consensus before requesting the comprehensive permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And this is a friendly 40B. The whole point is that the town has comparable input to the project prior, rather than just going to the zoning board and saying, well, we can do whatever we want unless you say no, and ignore the community. And so it's that process. I'm not surprised that people thought we were further down the road, because
Sorry, typically have.
Well, we're showing
99,
concepts and designs.
95% of projects, the first time people hear about it is when the planning board schedules the public hearing.
So I will say, we went in there with 10 and 12 units. If we back down to 5 units, they're gonna think we're working with them, right? Like, yeah, so
Well, yeah,
we
That's
maybe
part of
have
why
some
we made that
leeway, but
choice. I mean,
Yeah, we have leeway, but there was one person who spoke up and said it wasn't the density per se. It was the location of the units relative to their property.
Well, that was summer,
Right,
yeah, that was.
on Beach
next door.
Street, right?
Yeah.
And she say it's at the building's going to be closer than the current building is, and her question was really, well, why couldn't you move that, over this way? And so overall, but we did hear other concerns about the overall density, the number of units, number of people. Yeah, so we need to look at lower density alternatives, and does that make the project work, and what that looks like. And we'll do that. I mean, so the working group will continue to work on refining the concepts. We've got a list of issues from the community that the working group will consider as we do those, refine any current concepts we want to continue with, and new concepts we develop. In parallel, we'll talk to the planning board about how we want their input, even though they're not the permitting authority.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Good.
Excellent. I don't think do we have a financial update real quick?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's in the packet.
okay.
Yeah.
It's in the
Okay.
packet.
So I don't need to go through unless there are questions. Basically, you have end of year, and I feel confident with this. There's two statements, statement of financial condition. Key number there is we have what's our available cash that we could vote on today, and it's 1.3 million, okay? Which is, the second line up from the bottom. Okay, the rest just show you, and most of that is because we have encumbered funds for, the buy downs. So that's it. The second page, the statement of activities, is just a summary of how did we spend where did we get any money from, and then what did we spend in 24 and 25, actually cash out. I mean, these were real expenses, okay, against our cash. So that's it. The supporting services, we're keeping that, I think, at a very good level. We're being efficient, et cetera. The last two pages break things down in more detail as far as the individual projects. If you want to see, well, how much have we spent, et cetera, against different categories. I can, if you wind up with questions, look at this. If you have questions, thanks. The only other significant issue is there was a vote last October, town meeting, to transfer 201,000 change over to the trust. That has not been done as of this last month, as of the end of August.
Okay. And I had spoken to the town manager about that. She was following up on that.
Okay,
I'll check.
yeah, but we have not
Okay.
seen that. Now, what we're doing is, because we have lost the investment income for basically almost a year, part of our article for doing the standard 200 transfer will include the income that the town has,
Yeah.
but that we didn't get the benefit of, because you'll see from the reports we do, part of our income is investment income. Any questions? I'm done.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Do we?
moved.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Vote is 4-0 for being present.
Let's get out of here before Kate comes back.
I'll wait.
I'm just